It's Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He is Ron Filipkowski, editor-in-chief of MidasTouch.com, the latest place or the best place to get the latest news. In fact, it's now the only place to get the news. Isn't that right, Ron? I seem to think.
Well, there might be one or two others, but we're the best.
I'm not so sure. Merry Christmas to you. I think that's probably the last time we can say that. Not because it's been banned by Democrats, but because the season is almost coming to a close. Did you have a good Christmas?
I did. It was great. Yeah. Very relaxing. Family over. Not too many arguments. So, yeah.
That's good.
Oh, I don't know. Are we allowed to mention your Christmas?
I guess so. I mean, it's it's too late now, isn't it?
You've got married over Christmas. So
I did get married on Christmas Eve. Yeah. For the second time in my life, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. So let's steam in on the Christmas theme, because we've got a lot to uncover today. As you know, we uncover the far right and MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream media here on Uncovered, exclusively on the Midas Touch Network. I want to start with Trump's Christmas message. He posted something. When I first read it, I thought it was a joke, right? I thought somebody had made this up and done it in his Truth Social font. But it turned out this is actually him. I'll read it aloud for those who are listening on audio. He posted, "Merry Christmas to all, including crooked Joe Biden's only hope, deranged Jack Smith, the out-of-control lunatic who just hired outside attorneys fresh from the swamp, brackets unprecedented, to help him with his poorly executed witch hunt against Trump and MAGA. Included also are world leaders, both good and bad, but none of which are as evil and sick as the thugs we have inside our country who, with their open borders, inflation, Afghanistan surrender, which was his idea, Green New Scam, high taxes, no energy independence, woke military, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Iran, all-electric car lunacy, and so much more, are looking to destroy our once great USA. May they rot in hell. Again, Merry Christmas." How can that not be fake? It's like the fact that this is a former president of the United States, but not just that. This is a guy who's running for president and seems to have the full backing of the Republican Party. Who writes that stuff?
How we know it's not fake is because he does this every holiday. I've chronicled this. He did it on Veterans Day. He did it on Memorial Day, Easter, even Mother's Day. He does the same thing every time. And there's many different theories on it. One theory that's pretty plausible, I think, is that he can't stand his cult's attention being diverted away from him. Yeah. It's sort of like in Lord of the Rings, like the Eye of Sauron kind of swinging away from and that it bothers him that like all of his people are not paying attention to him. So he has to throw this out there just to get attention on a holiday.
He's jealous of Jesus. He can't let Jesus have like 2 days over the holidays. He feels like he's being upstaged by the Messiah.
Even on his resurrection day, he can't give him that day either. Yeah.
Right.
But it also goes to show just his horribleness, his awfulness. Yeah. You never see him with the grandkids on holidays or with his own kids. On the rare occasions you do, it's just this formal staged photo and then they go their separate ways. So yeah, he's a lonely, angry, bitter man. And that kind of a person is pretty dangerous.
And the lonely is something that we should really talk about, because to be isolated in politics, especially when you don't know who to trust, when the only people that really are around you are the people that are going to say what you want to hear. So you are very much in this kind of echo chamber of darkness, negativity, and sadness. How he's still alive, I don't know. Most people's hearts would have given out, or we know he eats his feelings. But there is still gas in the tank. I don't get it.
Yeah, what keeps him going? Hatred at this point is probably what drives him.
Right.
And I pay a lot of attention to what goes on at Mar-a-Lago. As you know, I follow a lot of the members there, and you watch him from day to day, as I do, coming in, going out, sitting down, photos, all that stuff. And yeah, you just see this same pattern of like, you know, he walks in, they all stand up and cheer and they applaud him and they tell him how great he is. He takes a few selfies. It's almost like that's his therapy. You know, that's his injection of, that's the love that he's getting, because obviously he's not getting it from anywhere else and close to him. He doesn't really want love. It seems to me he wants adoration. You know, he wants hero worship and seems to get off on it. But
it's the dictatorial thing, isn't it? I mean, this all feeds into him being proud to be a dictator, because even the media discussing him being potentially a dictator elevates his ego and it massages his ego. And it's almost like morals have no value. It's like, if someone thinks that I'm good enough to be a dictator, I'll take it.
I think he likes the dictator talk.
Absolutely.
I think he absolutely enjoys it because it projects power and strength and all of that,
which are things he doesn't have. And so it adds to the grift.
And him knowing people are afraid of him and in fear of him becoming president, he loves that too. He loves people being afraid of him. They're not afraid of him himself, but they're afraid of what he can do if he gets back in there with the power of the office. You know, but he's a weakling. You know,
it's so screwed up. All of it. You know, the whole kind of emotional narrative of it is so screwed up. And going back to that kind of the loneliness and having to project this strength when there is none. It's not how humans are supposed to behave. You know, it's a very unnatural glove to wear. And you know, he does his best.
And, you know, segueing a little bit into what we're going to talk about next, his faith or lack thereof. You know, Christians come in all different stripes, of course. You know, you have some that believe in God but never go to church. You have some that go every Sunday. And then you have some that sort of go on special occasions. And those special occasions are Easter and Christmas. And every pastor is going to tell you that, you know, the congregation swells on those 2 days of people that they've never seen before. But Trump can't even do that. The last time he went to church was Christmas 2021, and he went to a church in Dallas and gave a political speech and apologized to the crowd and said how much Melania really wanted to go with him, but couldn't make it. She was tied up doing other things. That was the last time he's been to church. He's been to church one time since leaving office, and it was one Easter he went in Palm Beach.
Because he's a fake Christian. He's just a fake Christian, and anybody who thinks he's a Christian has been fooled. Before we get into the religion, because I really do want to talk about that, let's just talk about Melania for a second, because she is effectively on the missing list, right? She now is. It seems that she is, former first lady for hire, right? To the highest bidder. You can rent her from a first lady store and have her sit at your table and pretend to be your wife. I mean, that's what it seems like.
The interesting thing for me is like to watch how the MAGA cult views their relationship and views her, because they absolutely believe that this is an idyllic marriage. I mean, they absolutely believe that the two of them sleep together, have dinner together every night, are best friends and love each other and are affectionate. And everything I see, like, that is simply not there. For example, you know, a lot of people were questioning yesterday, where was Melania on Christmas Eve? Where was Melania on Christmas? He's walking around Mar-a-Lago alone. Finally, he puts that out right there that you just put up. So acting as if this is the two of them today on Christmas afternoon. That was a 2018 photo.
Oh, really?
That photo is from 2018. And so he's putting that out like it was yesterday. And what happened was all the MAGA people were passing that around, that this post saying, "Oh, aren't they beautiful? Look, here's today's photo, Christmas photo." And I was like, no, that's 5 years old. That's not, Melania hasn't been seen in Mar-a-Lago in I don't know how long. And so, it's this, the way MAGA perceives their relationship is not what it is. And we chronicled this back months ago, I think it was USA Today or somebody did a story about how they renegotiated the prenuptial agreement because she did not want him to run again. She wants out of the spotlight. She wants out of politics. She doesn't want to get dragged back into this again. And it was misery for her to be first lady. It really was. And I don't think that's the life that she wants. And so obviously he knew that there's no way I can do this again without getting divorced for a third time or without Melania. So obviously they came to some sort of financial arrangement that does not involve her being seen with him very often. She hasn't once gone to a campaign event with him. She hasn't once gone on the road with him. As we see, it's Alina Habba that accompanies him on the road. Yeah. And she's almost never seen at Mar-a-Lago, just very, very rare sightings. I may have seen her 3 or 4 times in the last year.
It's also important to note, I don't think anybody really talks about this, but, being a model, which was her career before she met him, you have to be able to act in a certain way on cue for the camera. When it's freezing cold and you're in a swimsuit, you've got to look like it's warm and you're enjoying a summer's day. You have to, be able to look sexy or be able to look, enticing. Or if you're selling a product, you've got to look a certain way. These are the skills of the model.
That's right.
And these are the skills that she has been employing. She, is not feeling it. And this is just my opinion, I'm just being presumptuous here. But, knowing the model industry a little bit, I just know that that's one of her great skills, because when we listened back to that Christmas tape from 3 years ago where she was complaining about having to decorate the White House, do you remember? And she was on the phone to her friend. Was she talking to Stephanie Wolkoff?
That's right.
I think. But she was just moaning and she was just like swearing and being like, why do I have to do this shit? Everything. And it was a real eye-opener as to, she's just done. And that was years ago.
We see these very small, brief snapshots of the truth of these people. Yeah. And it usually comes when they're being recorded and they don't know it. Right. I mean, we've seen that with Trump when he's talking to the guys in Atlanta, Raffensperger, about the election, yes. That asking for the 11,000 vote. He doesn't know he was being recorded then.
Yeah.
That's when the real Trump and the real Melania come out, and we see that they're pretty ugly people.
Yeah.
Really behind the scenes, and it's a very transactional, relationship here. I don't think if she had never had Barron, I think that the most likely the marriage would have ended a long time ago.
Right.
I think that's what held them together for quite a while. That and having to put on this facade for politics.
Yeah. Again, it's just unnatural. The whole thing is squaring a circle. And for anybody who has had to live with the amount of stress that these types of scenarios come with, it shortens your life. It brings on, lifelong illness. It's like it is not a peaceful place for your body to reside. Yeah. And, I do think about the kind of holistic aspect of this. It does take its toll on people. And from a stress perspective, people underestimate quite how bad stress is for you.
But I think that has an impact on his psyche.
Yeah.
It's one of the court cases we've talked about a lot, stressing him out and causing him to be so angry and nasty, even worse than he was before.
Right.
But this is also part of it too. I think he's getting no companionship whatsoever, unless it's coming from Habba or somebody else.
Well, we know that Ivanka and Jared have kind of isolated themselves from him. And, he leaned on them quite a lot during his White House tenure. And, his ex-wife has now been buried. And it's like, well we presume, for tax purposes. But isn't this the problem, is that, the further down the rabbit hole he goes, the more people are going to flee. And we'll talk about it a bit later, but the Hitler rhetoric is still ramping up. He's not walking back any of those things, doubling down on it. This is only going to isolate him more and more. And it's very sad. Let's talk about the Trump being a fake Christian for a second, because you unearthed a montage video of him in 2016. Let's talk about the difference, the change, how he was sold to evangelicals in 2016 versus what they are doing now, because people are not really talking about this.
Yeah, so the Christmas post gave me the idea to go back and pull some of the more famous clips, like the 2 Corinthians thing
Yeah.
and all of that, to try and put together a montage to just show like this person is not really a Christian. He's never read the Bible. But, I was looking for a really obscure clip, which was the one where he compared the Bible to watching a movie. And it took me a long time to find it. But when I was in the process of trying to dig that up, it led me into so many clips that I had never seen before from the 2016 campaign. The reason why I hadn't seen them is because they were on all these Christian channels,
Right.
and all these Christian broadcasts. And when I started watching these, it really, really hit home looking back on them now about the way he was sold. Because what was happening then is very clearly is all the evangelical voters were very skeptical and very hesitant to back Trump. They were not on board until I think they broke very late. And you see all of these political evangelical leaders, the right-wing political people that mix religion and politics, that had signed on and were doing their best to sort of promote him to their followers. Well, how did they do that? Well, they knew that Trump was not a religious person, a person of faith. They knew he didn't know anything about the Bible, never went to church. So they sold like a political religious message, which was Trump ran on 2 things to the evangelicals. He talked about this constantly in every single interview, which is 2 things. Number 1, Supreme Court justices. I'm going to give you your Supreme Court justices. He never said to overturn Roe, but that was the implied,
Right.
What was going to happen. But he never said that because I think he didn't want to freak out the moderates.
Yeah.
And then number 2, repealing the Johnson Amendment. He promised them over and over again, which is the law that says that you lose your tax exempt status as a church if you get involved in politics. You can't endorse candidates and all of that. So he promised to do that. Now, he came through with the Supreme Court justice, but he never did repeal the Johnson Amendment. Okay. But that's how they sold it to their people. And but in some of these interviews, very rare occasions, they would ask him his knowledge of the Bible or his relationship with God or whatever. And, that's when hilarity ensued, just these absurd word salad answers that clearly showed that he had no relationship with the Bible whatsoever.
But also how dumb he thinks that everybody watching must be to be able to buy the excuses that he gives for not being able to talk about his faith. That's the thing. That's that kind of missing area that I think about a lot, is that when he's doing his word salad, as you describe, it's so obvious to anybody that he's on the back foot and he's making stuff up. And yet the interviewers are always like, oh, okay, I would just love someone to go, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they won't. Well, they won't, because they're trying to drag him over the finish line. Yeah. They're trying to help him.
That's right. They're all electioneering.
Yeah, but what any other normal human would do is just come clean and just say, look, my mom brought me to church when I was a kid, but then I got caught up in family and business, and I'm running all this business empire. I didn't have time to go to church. I didn't have time to read the Bible. I should have. Yeah. That's a failing of mine. But, I now realize that, and I'm sort of introspective, and I'm going to go back and start going to church. I mean, that's sort of, you come up with a semi-honest answer to kind of bluff your way through it. But he refuses to do anything like that. He's just got to act like he's a Christian.
But this is the narcissism, right? This is the psychologist will tell you this is the narcissistic personality disorder, where if you say anything, it therefore people must think it's true. And it's a bit like when he tried to pray COVID away by saying, oh, it's just a couple of people, it'll be gone by the end of the week, or, shining a light inside the body, or drinking the bleach, or hydroxychloroquine, or any of this kind of quack things that he was saying. The narcissistic personality is such that if I say it, it will become true. But what they do is they say it and then they close their eyes so they don't have to see what comes next.
Yeah, and the windmills cause cancer and kill all the whales and the birds and the forest fire theories. Yeah, you're right. It's the same kind of nonsense. He's just BSing. And
just before I show this mashup that you made,
yeah,
how do the Christians overcome his impurity? Because that really is the one that I struggle with the most. You know, he is known for his, not just his multiple wives, but, you know, the parties and the hookers and the drug use and, you know, Jeffrey Epstein and all of this stuff. Like, how do they overcome that in their minds?
It's interesting because the way that these same evangelical leaders are packaging him to their followers now is so much different than it was in 2016.
Right.
You know, in 2016, it was, he's going to do these two policy things for us. He's going to get us 3 Supreme Court justices and repeal the Johnson Amendment. We kind of know, yeah, he's not really one of us, but he's gonna do good things for us, whereas others maybe aren't going to follow through on that. Now, again, they're using an external things to sell him, which is, they're not saying, oh, he's become a devout Christian. You know, they're not making that selling point because they know they would look foolish. What they're saying, though, is that evil, deep state, Satanist people are controlling the government behind the scenes, and that God has chosen, you know, Trump to be the one to defeat them, and God is going to work through him. And that's, so they've completely changed the messaging now from, you know, he's going to do a couple specific policy things for us to now he's the Messiah. And maybe he doesn't even know it, and maybe he's not worthy of it, but God has chosen him, and we're all sinners and we're all imperfect. And that's the new messaging. I don't know if it's working. It seems to be working, I guess.
It's a little far-fetched, but I have no doubt that a good percentage of people who are looking for this absolution, who are looking for this end of days or whatever, you know, the resurrection. I mean, I don't really even know what to call it, but if they can pin that on Donald Trump, then they will.
Yeah.
Okay, here he is from the olden days.
The Bible. You talked about The Art of the Deal, great book. The Bible, even better. Why is that for you?
There's so many things, like, you know, you take whatever you want to say. There's so many things that you can learn from it. Proverbs, the chapter, never bend to envy. I've had that thing all of my life where people are bending to envy. And they're just, it's an incredible book. So many things you can learn from the Bible, and you can lead your life. And I'm not just talking in terms of religion. I'm talking in terms of leading a life, even beyond a religion. There's so many brilliant things in the Bible, and
I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are, and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it, because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into.
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite.
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Favorite authors?
Well, I have a number of favorite authors. I think Tom Wolfe is excellent.
Did you read Vanity of the Bonfires?
I did not.
It's a phenomenal book.
What book are you reading now?
Yeah.
Well, I'm reading
Bonfire of the Vanities.
I'm reading my own book again because I think it's so fantastic, Tom.
Is there a favorite Bible verse or Bible story that has informed your thinking or your character through life, sir?
Well, I think many. I mean, you know, when we get into the Bible, I think many, so many. And people talk an eye for an eye. You can almost say that. That's not a particularly nice thing. But, you know, if you look at what's happening to our country, I mean, when you see what's going on with our country, how people are taking advantage of us and how they scoff at us and laugh at us and they laugh at our face. And
what's the best book you've read beside Art of the Deal?
I really like Tom Wolfe's last book, and I think he's a great author. He's done a beautiful job.
Which book?
His current book. His current book. It's just out.
Bonfire of the Vanities.
Yes, and the man has done a very, very good job. And I really can't hear with this earphone, by the way.
And I asked some of the folks, because I hear this is a major theme right here, but 2 Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 3:17. That's the whole ball game. Where the Spirit of the Lord, right? Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And here there is Liberty College, but Liberty University. But it is so true. You know, when you think, and that's really, is that the one? Is that the one you like? I think that's the one.
Even to cite a verse that
no,
you like.
I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible, the whole Bible is an incredible. You can read it over, and many people have done this and they've led their life that way, but you can read it hundreds and hundreds of times. You know, David, they say great art, like the Mona Lisa. Some people, they look at it and it doesn't look as great at the beginning, and then they'll look at it. By the time they see it many, many times, it becomes the most, they can't take their eyes off it. Whereas art that's not great, you look at it, it looks beautiful at the beginning, but you get tired of it. The Bible is special. The Bible, the more you see it, the more you read it, the more incredible it is.
The whole Bible is an incredible. I joke very much so. They always hold up The Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time. But I just think the Bible is just something very special.
I don't like to use this analogy, but like a great movie, a great, incredible movie. You'll see it once, it'll be good. You'll see it, you can see it 20 times, and every time you'll appreciate it more. The Bible is the most special thing.
I mean, he's just a moron. We should make that clear. I mean, this is moronic. These answers are moronic, and he thinks that everybody is as dumb as he is.
Yeah, the Bible is just like The Godfather. You know, the more you watch it, the more you appreciate it, right?
But he talks about it like it's a business, you know, like a bestseller, like it's, you know, it did great. Oh yeah, it's a great book, like it's a page turner. It's so weird. Who talks about the Bible like that? I mean, even people like me who are not of faith, we still respect the fact that to other people that is an important. It's like the linchpin of their faith. He doesn't talk about it like it's that. He talks about it like it's a bestseller.
Yeah. And the other part, you know, the clip in there about Tom Wolfe, that's the part that's not about the Bible. It's just about him being asked about reading books.
Yeah.
I mean, why did he choose Tom Wolfe? At the time, Tom Wolfe was had the #1 bestseller in the country.
Right.
And so that's the only name he knew, you know.
He didn't know the name of the book.
But then he didn't know the name of the book. Yeah. You know,
well, but it's so obvious that he doesn't read, because you can tell that from his vocabulary and the way that he then, you know, the fact that he can't reference anything ever. So he makes stuff up like, oh, you know, like some people, they look at the Mona Lisa and then they have to go back. Like, how does he formulate this stuff? Because maybe he saw that in like Ferris Bueller's Day Off or something, you know, like 30 years ago, and just like kind of remembered that they spent the day at a museum. Because his popular cultural references are embarrassing.
And, you know, what's also embarrassing is how these evangelical interviewers and pastors and leaders who are asking him these questions don't call him on any of this stuff, because, you know, they have their own self-interest. It's they don't attempt to pin him down on any of it. You know, you keep saying it's a great book. Why is it great? What is it about the book that you like? Like, and by the way, you don't really reference it as a book. I mean, most Christians don't talk about the Bible as a book.
Well, they call it the good book. It's the good book, not the great book.
But I mean, you would reference that as a Christian as God's word, not it's a great book. I mean, he's talking about it like it's Tom Wolfe,
like it was ghost written. It was ghost written so that the author, you know, had a better chance of selling more copies.
Right. You know, I mean, and there's so much to that. I mean, the eye for an eye. I mean, he's talking about, well, I'd cite eye for an eye. Well, Jesus specifically like repudiated eye for an eye. And the other part that he cited at the beginning, I forget which one.
Was it Corinthians?
Before that.
Okay.
That section that he talked about, the envy part is not even in the Bible. So, you know, but they don't call him on it. And, you know, what clearly happened is those questions were not allowed after those first few interviews, because you never saw him being asked Bible questions ever again. There was only about a half dozen times during 16 when, you know, they could sneak in those kind of questions. And obviously they got the word from the campaign, like, no more Bible questions, because they just dried up.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad because, you know, faith is important to a good many people. And people look for leadership, and they are going to struggle to find it in that man. You know, that's the thing that I feel sad about. You know, to be a con artist is one thing, but to con people of faith out of their religion in order to grift them for money or just to kind of lead them down the wrong path. I mean, it really is some of the worst aspects of humanity, and it's like doing a deal with the devil.
And, you know, we've never seen really from either party a presidential candidate package himself this way as as a Christian leader of faith. You know, maybe Pat Robertson when he ran in '88, but that he wasn't serious.
But we're not supposed to be a country of faith anymore. You know,
We're
it's
not.
like that's the whole point. Is that
the
you
idea,
do you?
But we've had very devout presidents and very devout presidential candidates, but they never sold that as part of their deal.
Yeah.
You know, they kept that separate. And now we have this person who is the least faith,
Right.
you know, the least person of faith we've ever had run for president. I can't think of anybody who is less a person of faith than Donald Trump, and yet he's being packaged as the Messiah. It's so bizarre.
Even the atheists amongst us have more faith than that guy. You know, seriously.
And probably know more Bible verses.
Yeah, and understand the kind of morals, the moral teachings of the Bible, which are in all books of faith. You know, from the Torah to the Quran to they all teach the same. The theming is the same, and yet the guy who doesn't get it is the guy who is the mouthpiece for Christianity. It's just jokes. Listen, we could talk about Donald Trump all show. We will go back to him a little bit later, but I want to move on to another of your favorites from Florida. It's Ron DeSantis this time. We've talked a lot about how his wife, who is a former news anchor, Casey DeSantis, how compared to him, she is so eloquent and very capable with the cameras, something that he is not. And it seems like she's having to do a little bit more work. Let me play the clip, and then you can kind of talk us through what you think is kind of going on here.
The people who are criticizing us are the people who are saying that we shouldn't be spending time with our family and our 7, 5, and 3-year-olds. Like there is folks who want to go up to Washington because they like the cocktail class circuit and they like to get, friendly with the lobbying corps, and they criticized him for coming home in Washington when he was serving to come call his family or go back to his office so he could talk to us and talk to his family. And so, I just reject that, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous. We as a family, and we talked about this earlier, your kids grow up so fast. We have 7, 5, and 3.
Any plans for more?
Well, buckle your seatbelt. I think I'm good with 7, 5, and 3 right now. I'm trying to, get from point A to point B.
So you're not trying. You're trying to get to point A.
Let me just make sure I clarify that. Yes, trying to get a 7, 5, and a 3-year-old out the door every day with hats and gloves and what have you is a challenge. But,
you make it look effortless.
Well, thank you for that, because it's like a duck, I guess. Under the water, you're paddling like heck, but above, everything is just fine. I haven't even thought that far ahead yet to think about. I'm just still trying to get back to the Christmas present thing, right? To make sure we have everything under the tree.
Is he going to cook? Is he a cook?
He is a good cook. He has cooked. I don't think you're going to cook. I love cooking. I am not good at cooking, but I enjoy the process of doing it, and I like to have my little helpers in the kitchen with me. So we're going to attempt to cook. Well, I don't want to give in to any of their narratives, but what I want them to know about Ron DeSantis is he is the real deal. When he says he's going to do something, he gets it done. He delivers on 100% of his promises. And I think we as Republicans, we are tired of losing. He showed in the state of Florida that you can win, and you can win big. And when he won by that largest landslide in the history of the state of Florida, it wasn't just Republicans. It was independents, and indeed Democrats were coming on board to support him because of his leadership. And so I want people to know that. I want people to know that he's a good dad. I want people to know that he served in the United States military. He's the only one running who served in the military, the only one who deployed to Iraq in 2007 and served in a war zone. And so I think these are really important things, because I think people see they want a restoration of sanity. They want a restoration of family values. They want to win again, and they want to win on the issues that matter to them.
She didn't mention the bit about him advocating for torture in Guantanamo Bay, but what's going on here? I mean, did he sit in silence for the entirety of that interview?
Yeah, he spoke a little bit. I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, I have chronicled over the years how the DeSantises have used kids, not simply their own kids, but other people's kids, as political props. And when they do all these controlled press conferences and stuff and presentations and propaganda things in Florida over the last 3-4 years, invariably they'll have kids lined up behind him, standing behind him at all of these events. And this is all coming from Casey. This is her thing, because she thinks packaging them as, parents of young kids is what's going to cause people to vote for them. and that's going to distinguish them from Trump or Haley or somebody like that. And that's why she just repeats constantly their ages. You hear 7, 5, and 3, 7, 5, and 3. And she's always talking about, how they behave and how they're playing and dragging them in. So at the beginning, when she's talking about being criticized, the situation is these kids have been on the road since March, traveling to Iowa. They haven't been home. I don't know if they're going to school, what they're doing, but that's where the criticism comes, because they're pulling them up in front of all these strangers all the time, on stages and on camera and putting microphones in their face, and I just think about that as like a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old, what that must be like for them to go through that, to be having people looking at you all the time. And it's just not normal. And it's just so strange for parents to use their kids that way. We've not really seen that in politics before, where the young kids are actually part of the campaign every single day. Never seen it before.
Maybe they think it's the differential, Ron, because they're looking at the other candidates and they're going, well, obviously Trump's not going to wheel Barron out, and he's not had much luck with Don Jr. and Eric. So, and the fact that the others don't have children or very much keep them in the background, and they think that this kind of Christian, this perfect family union, of 2.4 children or 3 children and a dog, or to try and create an image that does belong on the front of an old-fashioned Christmas card, and that's really what I feel they're doing here. But the way they're going about it, it's really. I mean, I don't want to use the phrase child abuse. It's a bit dramatic, but it really is very unhealthy to expose children to this kind of, not just media, but actually the political climate, which is so divisive. Kids don't need that. And I speak as someone who has kids very similar ages to the DeSantises. And trust me, I mean, I also think she's exhausted. I mean, anybody who's got children where, especially if your husband's off on the campaign trail and you're having to work and be a mum at home, it is exhausting. And it's a full-time job. And, when people used to use that phrase, oh, I'm just a housewife, it's like, are you kidding me? Like, if that's the case, you're working much harder than your partner. And I really feel like, that the people now understand that to bring up kids in this modern world with all the pressures associated with that, and also the cost, that it does take an army to pull that off. And I feel like she's almost crying for help. It's almost like it's family counseling, where she's saying, I need my husband back at home. This is a lot.
It could be. I don't know. I don't know. But I also think that, I don't think voters are really weighing how stressful her job as a mom is, which is what she continues to talk about.
Yeah.
As a decision in who they're going to vote for president. Like, okay, you're having a stressful time with your young kids on the road. Why are we talking about that?
Yeah.
Why aren't we talking about healthcare? Americans, like probably most people, are saying, what are you going to do to make my life better? They don't want to hear about your family problems,
But the political advisors are looking at him, who does not connect well because of his
that's it.
wiring, or because I keep saying he's definitely, in my view, on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, and because of the way that he communicates, I recognize that behavior. And I feel that the advisors have said, we need to make him more human.
Yeah.
We need to be talking more about family, and you need to be able to connect with everyone. And so she's come in, and because she's a professional, she's taken that brief and turned it into a production. And it's too much.
Yeah. And this is not something that a candidate should have to spend time on, is reassuring people that he's normal, and he's a regular guy and a regular dad. And so, having to cede half of your interview time on Fox to your wife, or more than half, to explain that you're a good dad is not ideal. when you're running for president.
Have you noticed how he changes when she talks? It's like he goes into low power mode.
He does.
Right? It's almost as if he...
Always fun to watch his face.
Well, he's relieved. I'll just show a few more seconds. Just look at the way he lets her do it and then, like, shuts down.
People who are criticizing us are the people who are saying that we shouldn't be spending time with our family and our 7, 5, and 3-year-olds. Like, there is folks who want to go up to Washington because they like the cocktail class circuit.
It's so interesting to me that I think he feels a sense of relief when she's there. And maybe he's like, I need her with me. You know?
I think he does feel that way. But even, her first statement right there, she says, people are criticizing us because we're spending time with our kids. What a ridiculous statement.
Yeah.
It's like no one is criticizing them for that.
No.
What they're criticizing them for is dragging their kids in front of strangers every day in and day out at all of these events that cannot be healthy for young kids. And by the way, going back to another thing, I mean, it's been chronicled that the person she idolized was Jackie Kennedy.
Right.
And in her mind, she's going back to all those film clips of the Kennedy kids, playing touch football on the lawn and, it being, but those scenes were very natural and they weren't forced.
Yeah.
That's who the Kennedys were. That's who that family was.
Yeah.
It was just them in their natural surroundings of all these little young kids running around and their pets. But she's trying to recreate that like in Iowa on the campaign trail. And it's not working.
Let's talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, this guy could not be more annoying, even if you gave him a bag of annoying pills. And you unearthed a clip where you said, I wonder if he is self-aware enough to understand how much of a dick he sounds when he treats every person who asks a question like they are beneath him or corrupt or stupid. Here it is.
You talked about Dems not propping up Michelle Obama or Newsom, but now Nikki Haley. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Are you saying Nikki Haley's going to run as a Democrat?
I think that some of this is going to fly over the head of some of the media that's very, I don't mean to be disrespectful of you all. I know you're here on dispatch from your employers, but I think that this is going to be a little bit above your heads in terms of what's going on. Our Republican base understands it, and so I don't think I'm going to be able to translate it in a language that you're going to be able to understand.
I mean, he just lost himself the election.
Yeah, the person who sent that to me was the one who shot it, and she was just stunned because she had never seen him before. She's very non-political. She's just a camera person.
Right.
And she sent it to me and she goes, what a jerk that he was. This reporter was very respectful, was asking a fair question. And, what does Vivek say? Basically what Vivek is saying there, Vivek is saying there is, this is a right-wing conspiracy theory that only, right-wingers on Twitter understand. You wouldn't understand it, member of the media, and it's like, why do you have to answer every question that way? I mean, we see it in the debates too. I mean, every question he gets from the media, he attacks the questioner's motives. He attacks whether they're corrupt, and in this case, attacks whether they're aware of a right-wing conspiracy theory. And that person may be very well aware of it, and that's why he's asking the question. The point is that this goes all the way back to George H.W. Bush, who I think really lost his election in 1992. One big reason why he lost was he was constantly doing this, in a less abrasive way, but he was constantly warring and fighting with reporters and the media. And calling them on their bias, and that may be true. Reporters may have bias from this person or that person, but you can't do that as a political candidate. You can't fight with the media. Voters don't like it. We saw this with Kari Lake. Kari Lake did this too, constantly fighting with reporters. Just give your talking points. If you don't want to answer their questions and you want to say something different, just give your talking points, but don't fight with the press.
But this all goes back to Donald Trump and from 2016 when he started the war on the media, enemy of the people, fake news. And you know, we talk about democracy collapsing in America. Well, for me as a journalist, it's like to refer to the free press as the enemy of the people is really that first kind of line of on the fascism list, where it's like, if you turn the press against the people, the press are the people. Journalists are the people. They are representing the people, and you need them in order to maintain a functioning democracy. And he has trashed that. And so people like Ramaswamy are picking up that baton, Kari Lake as well, and running with it. And it's caught on.
In a different way, though, because Trump loves the press. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Okay. Vivek, Kari Lake, they hate them. They loathe the press. They condescend to them. They think they're the enemy. And George H.W. Bush felt the same way.
Right.
But Donald Trump doesn't feel that way. That's an act to him. You know, it's, fake news. You know, he says that to discredit them when they're unearthing bad things about him.
Mm-hmm.
But Donald Trump does not do this to reporters. I mean, sometimes he'll do it to female reporters.
Yeah.
But usually he doesn't attack the questioner and he doesn't attack their motive. He'll just do his thing and give his spin. So it is a little bit different. In terms of the combativeness.
Understood. I've got a lot to kind of get through, actually. I've realized that we've been talking so much about Donald Trump that, you know, we're missing out on so many joys. Oh, there was that clip that you posted where you just wrote, "Oh my God," separated by several spaces. It was the video of Ron DeSantis eating a sandwich in a Jewish delicatessen where it looked like he'd never had a meal before. You also had the 800-year-old man standing behind him, completely like blown away by this moment. And then whilst he had food in his mouth, he starts then asking what else they sell. Turkey, pastrami, corned beef. If you're eating right now, I apologize for showing this clip. Here it is.
Okay, do you guys, so you do pastrami, corned beef, turkey, what else?
Pastrami. Yeah.
The one, you have like a big sandwich that's like $23. Which one is that? I don't want it.
I apologize. It was the 2,000-year-old man, not the 800-year-old man. If I'm going to do a Mel Brooks reference, I might as well get it right. I mean, you know, I don't really condone playing these kind of clips because it's a little unfair. But maybe he was just hungry. What's your take on this?
See, there's two parts to this. I posted two clips from this visit. So what he's doing is he's going to this Jewish restaurant, deli, and the purpose of the visit was the owner of the place has a relative who is a hostage in Gaza.
Okay.
And so he had a picture of her on like one of those, you know, posters, kidnapped posters. And, you know, he was trying to tell DeSantis about his relative and her plight. And DeSantis was just, just blowing it off, like did in one ear out the other, paid no attention. And then they give him this sandwich. And, you know, he wolfs. And I've talked about his eating habits and his personal habits and how he wolfs things down. And so I posted two clips. I posted the one of him blowing off the guy with the kidnapped relative. And in fact, what he did was the guy tried to show him DeSantis the picture of his kidnapped relative. And what does DeSantis do? Takes it and holds it up and with a big grin on his face, like he's posing for a selfie with it. So that was bizarre. So I posted both things. Now, of course, him being bizarre about the kidnapped Jewish relative didn't get hardly any engagement. The one of him stuffing his face with pastrami went viral. That's American politics for you, man.
Yeah, I know. It's sad but true. But you know, he's in a Jewish deli, and yet it wasn't that long ago that he was condoning Nazi rallies in Florida by not condemning them. Right?
Oh, he'll never condemn anything.
Right. It's beggars belief to me. Why do they even let him in? Now, tell me about this interesting theory, this kind of conspiracy theory. This is the story from Tim Burchett, Representative Tim Burchett. It claims that some Republican members of Congress have been compromised by Russian hookers and drugs. They're being blackmailed to switch their votes. You know, when you posted this the other day, I was thinking, this is a huge story, if there's any truth to it. Is there any truth to it?
I mean, you know, you're right. I mean, but it's hard. I kept, like, there's been no media coverage of this. A handful of right-wing outlets picked it up, smaller ones, but largely, you know, no mainstream media picked up on this. I have no idea why. You have a member of Congress who's been served 3 terms. It's not like this guy's, you know, just falling off the turnip truck here. And he's making these accusations against his own Republican colleagues that are quite serious, specific, that they're changing their votes because they're being blackmailed. And I'm just like thinking, James Comer's been chasing down Hunter Biden checks for 3 years, you know, with nothing. And this guy's saying much worse is happening right now. And it seems like nobody cares. Now, maybe Burchett maybe they're chalking it up to Burchett's being some kind of nut job, but he's said this a few times now. So it's not like he's.
And it does make sense, because this is the kind of operations that the Kremlin does do, aside from poisoning people and everything else, disappearing people and all sorts. Let's listen. And I would advise people to really listen carefully to what this guy is saying, because this is if there is evidence, then this is a massive story that is waiting to break.
Their portfolios, and they love their money more than they do anything else, and they protect it, and they protect the people that do that. And by doing so, you know, the old honeypot, the Russians do that, and I'm sure members of Congress have been caught up. Why in the world would good conservatives vote for crazy stuff like what we've been seeing out of Congress? It's how it works. You're visiting, you're out of the country, or out of town, or you're in a motel or bar in D.C., and some whatever you're into, women or men or whatever, comes up, and they're very attractive, and they're laughing at your jokes, and you're buying them a drink. Next thing you know, you're in the motel room with them naked, and next thing you know, you're about to make a key vote, and what happens? Some well-dressed person comes up and whispers in your ear, "Hey man, there's tapes out on you. Were you in a motel room on whatever with whoever?" And then you're like, "Uh-oh," and said, "You really ought not be voting for this thing." I mean, and what do? It's human nature. And, no man or no woman actually is an island, and they know what to get at. If it's women, drugs, booze, it'll find you in D.C. and in most elected offices. And that's what people of power and influence do. And it's just, I've been in this game my whole life. I spent 16 years in the state legislature in Tennessee and 8 years as county mayor. And now I'm in my 5th year of Congress. But it's just, the stakes are higher, but the game is still the same.
If Aaron Sorkin wrote that, you wouldn't believe it, right? If it was in House of Cards or The West Wing or any of these amazing shows. And yet, here it is coming from the horse's mouth.
And he's not accusing Democrats. I mean, this isn't a Democrat accusing Republican. No. It's him saying it about his own people. And this is not the first time. I mean, Madison Cawthorn brought this stuff up. George Santos brought this stuff up. So he's not the only one talking about this stuff happening. And by the way, I know you're from London. Naked is Tennessean for naked.
I was going to ask you what that was. Naked.
Naked. Nekked. So that's what he says. I mean, I guess you could just say, well, that's just Burchett being Burchett and talking crazy, but I don't know. Seems like there's a lot of smoke here. There's at least as much smoke as James Comer has dug up on Hunter Biden.
This notion of them kind of reversing stories, a bit like with the whole kind of claim of the Russia hoax, as they called it. The Russia investigation, the Mueller report, all of that stuff was based in truth. Even the Steele dossier was based in truth, much of it. And yet they've managed to kind of rewrite the narrative by repeating Russia, and all this stuff. And yet all roads do seem to lead to the Kremlin time and time again. And you know, Joe Rogan has been a big proponent of this stuff as well, you know, and I'm going to play a clip that you posted where he says people regret voting for Joe Biden and was labeling Biden mentally incompetent for talking about airports during the Revolutionary War. And then during the clip, he gets fact-checked because he discovers that actually it was Joe Biden taking the mickey out of Donald Trump for saying it. And then he has to backtrack. This is a very interesting clip. But for more reasons than that, because, you know, he even references the Russia hoax and stuff. I mean, Joe Rogan has the biggest view or the most viewed podcast in history.
Does.
And yet he is, to all intents and purposes, a far-right, you know, Republican, potentially Russian operative. Do you see what I mean? It's like the way that he talks suggests to people in the know that all of these conspiracies, to people who don't know any better, are effectively hearing some really, you know, horrific stuff. Doesn't make any sense. But this was a moment that he got caught out. Do you want to say anything about it before I play the clip?
Well, I'll just say, I played this to my Trump-loving son on Christmas Day because he was talking up Rogan, and he was saying, oh, you know, I heard Rogan said this. I go, wait a minute. Let me play you something from Rogan, and I played him this.
Right. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because occasionally when they make the mistakes and the veil slips, that you really see that the whole thing is a production. The whole thing is an act, the faux outrage. And in fact, the kid he has on with him, who's just like agreeing, is the worst kind of proponent of this type of behavior, to kind of egging them on to criticize Joe Biden based in...
And by the way, he's also the highest paid podcaster in the world. Right. I mean, this guy's pulling down a huge amounts of money.
Gazillions.
And this is what I've talked about before, by the way, which is, you know, we focus so much on like TV hosts. People like Joe Rogan have way more influence over more people than your average Fox or even
well, it's like talk radio over decades. You know, the Rush Limbaugh movement that has really changed the DNA of people. And I've referenced a few times this amazing documentary called The Brainwashing of My Dad, where the documentary maker makes a film about her father who had a job where he had to drive for a couple of hours each way each day. And he was a liberal, and over 20 years he got reprogrammed because he was listening to this extremist and far-right talk radio. It's, you know, this is how America got brainwashed. It's very sad. Anyway, let's take a look at the clip. Here it is.
Well, you know, there's people that voted for Biden that are doing it now. They're like, what did I do?
Right.
Like, what did I choose? Like, how is this guy?
Yeah, you just can't listen to an interview where he's saying some of the stuff he says that just makes no sense at all. It's like you can't listen to those interviews and feel like you made a good decision. I don't know how you could.
Did you hear what he said like yesterday or a couple of days ago? He was talking about the Revolutionary War. He's like, one of the reasons why we lost the Revolutionary War, one of the problems with the Revolutionary War was they didn't have enough airports. Yeah. Have you seen that?
I saw that. Like, what the hell?
Like, pull him.
It's crazy.
If you had any other job and you were talking like that, they would go, hey, you're done.
If you talk like that to a doctor at your medical exam to fight, they'd be like, okay, like obviously you're not fighting. You would also, here's 8 weeks of being helped out by a professional, like
you might not ever do anything again.
No, it's one of the wildest things ever.
It's insane.
Yeah,
and the media gaslighting you to protect. It's just people are so afraid of Trump being in office and Republicans being in office.
A few moments later,
hanging out with the guy, I'm like, man.
Well, it's just the media narrative. I mean, so many people were fed this lie that the Russia collusion.
Yeah.
Was
this the video you're talking about?
Let me see what this one says. I don't think it is.
What? By the way, the same stable genius that said the biggest problem we had in the Revolutionary War is we didn't have enough airports. Whoa.
Yeah, that's it.
Whoa.
Right,
what?
Just for the record.
Is that fake?
It's not fake, but he was referencing Trump saying that. Here's what Trump saying it in 2019. Donald Trump said something about that. He didn't say Jesus. He said a stable genius, and that's where the transcription.
Let me hear what it says. What did he say?
In June of 1775, the Continental Congress created a unified army out of the revolutionary forces encamped around Boston and New York, and named after the great George Washington, Commander-in-Chief. The Continental Army suffered a bitter winter of Valley Forge, found glory across the waters of the Delaware, and seized victory from Cornwallis of Yorktown. Our army manned the airport. It ran the ramparts. It took over the airports. It did everything it had to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he fucked up.
Yeah, he did. But I feel like
Took over
that's
the airport.
you can tell too. It sounds like a little different. He's like, you could tell he like messed up his words, but yeah. He was just, I don't know.
Took over the airports.
Well, that's
It
the
is
thing
funny.
about
But it's-
media these days. It's like
Right.
You
never
got to
know.
look into it.
Yeah.
The media.
Blame the media.
You know, I mean, it's you see where he says anybody who says that is totally disqualified. You'd put him in a home, and then he finds out it was Trump that said that. Oh, well, you know, he screwed up.
It's the backtracking and the faux outrage, and if people think that, because you know, it's not just Joe Rogan. You know, there are these huge media personalities. Elon Musk is another one who spent $44 billion buying the town square, right? Even though it was worth less than a third of that, and now less than a quarter. Is that, you know, they are all operatives, right? I don't know who for. I guess, you know, it could be the RNC, it could be the Kremlin, it could be anybody. But the point is that they keep repeating propaganda that comes, you know, is that Vladimir Putin would be thrilled to know was being said. Sure. And you know, so this is my concern, is that these people who have been given platforms or bought platforms, who have a mouthpiece and an audience, they are just grifting as well. Everyone is making their money. Everybody's got their agenda. And that is not a game that Democrats play. They just don't.
No, they don't. I mean, we could doctor stuff, make fake stuff, lie about stuff all day long. If we wanted to, it'd be pretty easy to do. But no, we get called on the carpet. We get fact checked. This is why I talked about this before. It's so much easier to be this right-wing social media influencer because you never get fact checked because they don't care. Whereas if you're on the left and you're doing the same thing, if you say one thing wrong, you get called out on it, which is good. You know,
but it's also much more lucrative on the right.
It is.
And that really, you know, unfortunately, money, everybody has their price. And there are plenty of people who have shifted their politics. I mean, look at Trump. Trump was no Republican, right? He effectively shifted his entire political position because he knew that there was money to be grifted out of Republicans and conservatives and evangelicals and a group that was easy to grift. And that is the tragedy of us having to meet every week to have these conversations, Ron, is that the whole thing is based on a lie, you know, on this faux outrage and Trump just getting on the gravy train.
The critical thinking skills of the people on the right are nowhere near what they are on the left. And I've been on both sides, as you know. You know, I can tell you that as an objective
But
observer.
Rogan is not smart. I mean, Rogan is not an intelligent person. And yet it seems like he's managed to convince people that he is.
Yeah, I don't know how.
What's the name of that other character? Jordan Peterson. Again.
You got Tim Pool.
These people they're not smart, but they are grifters and political operatives.
And they have huge audiences.
Huge audiences.
Crazy. Yeah.
Let's talk about Kari Lake just for a minute. We don't have a huge amount of time, so I'm kind of keen to get this little clip in. So you posted that you called her Rudy 2.0, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And that she's not happy with the judge's ruling. She says they're suing me for defamation for having the courage to point out all the election fraud. Just tell us about this and I'll show the clip.
This case has flown under the radar because Rudy's case has gotten a lot more attention, but you know, Kari Lake made very similar accusations about the Arizona election officials.
Yeah.
Okay. More senior officials than a situation with Ruby Freeman, people who are actually running the elections offices, but very similar allegations. and those people are suing her as well for defamation. And so I think that, and she of course is running for Senate. This is the last thing she needs right now. A, and B, she's got a considerable amount of money, like Rudy, saved up to where she's not, judgment proof. Like they can really hurt her with this. Well, she tried to get this case thrown out with a motion to dismiss, saying she had First Amendment rights and all of this and that. But the judge denied it, tossed her motion out. So this is going to go to trial, and it's going to most likely go to trial in the middle of her Senate campaign, which is not going to be helpful to her. If she's got to be in trial in June, July, and then gets hit with a few $1 million judgment in the middle of the campaign, not helpful. It's also not helpful because she's completely changed her strategy this time around from 2022. She's trying to present this kinder, gentler image where she's doing a lot of stuff with kids, and she's not this fire-breathing person that she was in 2022. She's not talking about election fraud or Trump. So she's trying to sort of recreate herself for like the 9th time. And the last thing she wants is to drag this stuff back through the courts again, but it's happening to her.
You can't just say anything and get away with it, or repeatedly say things. You can slip of the tongue is fine, or to make a kind of a misstatement, but to keep pushing the fact that the election was stolen, to devalue democracy, that was her calling card. So you can't backtrack from that. Here she is.
And that's why they're in a panic about the election. That's why they're trying to indict President Trump. That's why they're suing me for defamation, for having the courage to point out all of the election, not just irregularities, but election fraud. These government officials are now suing me, trying to take everything I have away from me for having the courage to speak out. And that tells you right there they're trying to hide something.
Oh, absolutely.
We know our elections are not honest. We know they're not on the up and up, and the American people want honest.
The American people want honest. They've come to the wrong place.
Well, here's the thing. Truth is an absolute defense in a defamation case. So if what she's saying is true, then she'll win. But this is the problem with Rudy's case. He claimed he was going to prove it was true, and he never did. So now she's going to have her chance. Go ahead and prove it in a courtroom. The problem is they always prove their cases on podcasts, but when they get in court under oath, there's no proof.
Two different personalities. It's the same with Trump. The guy he is in front of a judge is very different to the guy he is outside the courtroom. I want to finish with Donald Trump, actually. You have a couple of clips of him. We've got one about the healthcare promise and the other one with Nikki Haley. Let's start with the Nikki Haley one, because she is, to all intents and purposes, suddenly doing rather well in polling. Not that polling necessarily is where we, put all of our trust, but she is actually only a few points behind him now.
In New Hampshire, yeah. She's not going to win. She's not going to do, I think, that well in Iowa. She'll do okay, but she's got a shot in New Hampshire, and because what happened is the governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, endorsed her, and he's quite popular in New Hampshire, and so that was huge for her. What would be even bigger for her is for Chris Christie to get out, because he polls really well in New Hampshire.
Right.
So if he got out and backed her, she could definitely beat Trump. And this poll really has Trump rattled. He has gone all out attacking Haley this week because he's completely freaked out about this poll. And if somehow she can pull out New Hampshire, I really would love to see it. I'm not a huge Nikki Haley fan, but I just know that Trump would completely melt down. And then, by the way, after New Hampshire, they go to South Carolina, which is her home state. So it's a pretty solid Trump state, but, she's got a shot to do pretty well there, too.
He rushed out this video to try and, counterbalance this news of her doing well in New Hampshire. Here it is.
Great poll numbers in Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina. Frankly, great poll numbers everywhere. Thank you very much, and make America great again.
Look, so why that's funny is that poll came out, and he literally ran into his home studio there at Mar-a-Lago, filmed that literally an hour later, and it's only 5 seconds, and put that out. That's how insecure he is, that he felt the need to do that.
And we're going to see more of that as time goes on. When there's rulings and judgments, he'll be in and out of that kind of weird, kind of Stalinistic studio that he has there, with the flags behind and the dim lighting and stuff. It's so interesting, isn't it, how his insecurity is going to become very much, part of it's going to be kind of the linchpin for all of his appearances, because there's going to be so much criticism as well as judgments and rulings and gag orders and various, even more legal cases against him, that he's going to end up having to just make these denial responses or just try and rewrite history as he often does.
Yeah. I think, and I've said this, I think it's going to be very interesting to see if he skips this Iowa debate.
Yeah.
There's this big debate in Iowa a week before the caucus, and this is the local debate. It's not a Fox thing, it's local Iowa TV, local moderators. No person has ever skipped that debate, and as a serious candidate. Is he actually going to skip that one? If he does, I truly believe that one will hurt him if he skips. So
that's interesting, because I personally think he is going to skip every debate.
He may.
I don't think there is a single televised debate or even non-televised, unofficial debate that he will appear at.
Well, what I want to see real quick is if he does not appear at that, and if he does, it does hurt him. Will he then appear at the next one? That will be interesting to watch.
Well, he's not taking advice from anybody, is he? I mean, he's doing everything on gut, and I think his theory is that the less exposed he is, the less chance he has of having to answer to things, because, on the fly, he knows that he will make mistakes. He knows that he's not Teflon coated, and deep inside, I think the insecurity, the one way for the narcissist to protect themselves out in the wild is just not to go into the wild.
Yeah.
Just to be in controlled environments. I want to finish with this clip on healthcare. Of course, when he was president, he kept announcing every 2 weeks that in 2 weeks there would be the new Trump healthcare plan, that he was going to overturn or repeal Obamacare and replace it with something that is cheaper and has better healthcare, which of course, as we know, is not possible. In this country that has for-profit healthcare, the last person on the planet that would be able to negotiate better healthcare for less money is Donald Trump. And yet he kept promising it and could never do it. And now he's doing it again.
I don't want to terminate Obamacare. I want to replace it with much better health care. Health care that's absolutely better than what you have right now and also cheaper to you.
So
what's he talking about, Ron?
Okay, so where's the plan? I mean, I don't even know why he did this time, because I mean, he did the same thing in 2016, promised this big healthcare plan. It never came. And then we had the famous moment with not Kellyanne Conway, the one that's on Fox now. Kayleigh McEnany had the 60 Minutes interview, and she claimed that she had Trump's healthcare plan and it was binders of empty paper. And he never proposed one. And now, 3 years has gone by. He's not talked about healthcare at all. And now all of a sudden this week, out of the blue, he's promising another healthcare plan. The reason why I don't understand it is two reasons. Number one, nobody on the right is calling for this. Like, you don't hear anybody in Congress or even his supporters, his MAGA base, saying we need to repeal Obamacare. Like, you don't hear that like you did in 2016. That was an issue in 2016. It's not anymore. Like, most of them actually don't mind Obamacare.
Or they're even using it. I mean, that's the other thing. There's a huge number of Republicans
it's not even an issue.
Yeah.
And then number two is, like, he's so obviously faking it at this point. Like, even his supporters have to know, like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why he's doing this.
It's just so weird, and I feel like maybe it's muscle memory with him. Right. He has these old tropes. He's running out of stuff. He's thinking, what can I say? Because, things are not looking good. So I'll do the healthcare shtick again and see where that gets me. What a joke.
Right.
Okay, listen, we have to finish, but it's been a pleasure. I enjoy you as ever. And let's, do it again next Wednesday. What do you think?
All right. Hopefully you're both married now, so we can't have that excuse for next week. So
no. Okay.
Just got to focus on the show.
We'll just focus on the show. Thanks for reminding me that, Ron. All right. Have yourself a good day. Everybody check us out on Twitter and Threads and also at MidasTouch.com.